I'm Nathan Seward. I'm a wildlife conservation biologist for Colorado Parks and Wildlife here in Gunnison. And this is a topic we can easily talk about all day. And so it's going to be a jam full hour, lots of great information. And I'm super appreciative of all my co-presenters here. Cheryl with the Upper Gunnison Water Conservancy District. Brandon Miller, again, with Partners for Wildlife, Fish and Wildlife Service. Ashley Holm with U.S. Forest Service here in Gunnison. And then we're lucky enough to have Heather Reynolds, MEM student. Heather's going to be talking about some of the wildlife response to these wet meadow restoration treatments. And then I believe Jace Cousins is online. He's going to be talking about some of the soil monitoring work. There he is. How you doing, Jace? Thanks for joining us. Jace had to make a quick run over to Grand Junction. His wife is, they're expecting twins. So I appreciate him making the effort to join us today. I don't know if my priorities would be the same, to be honest. So thank you, Jace. And there's a few individuals here I want to recognize as well. They've just been key to the overall effort here. Let's see, Matt Vesquez with the U.S. Forest Service. Matt, if you just raise your hand. In the very back, Andrew Raybart with the BLM. He's our hydrologist here locally. And then where's Colin at? Colin, thank you, Colin. Colin McCullough, he's my crew leader from last year, our CPW seasonal crew. So. All right, so nothing too new here. Some of the climate projections for the Intermountain West. Again, climate change, I don't see how people can really deny it with all the science out there, but locally we're talking about increased warming, hotter heat waves here in the summer, our late season snowpack decreasing, declines in river flows and soil moisture are going to decrease. And then, of course, our droughts are expected to become hotter and more severe and frequent. So can anyone tell me, what do greater sage grouse in Wyoming have in common with the Gunnison sage grouse here in the Gunnison Basin? You got it? What's that? They do like sagebrush, but they also like moisture. They love their precipitation. So if you look at these two graphs kind of cross-eyed, you're going to see a very similar population trend. You'll see some increases and declines. And if we dig a little bit deeper into the literature, it's actually Dr. Patrick Donnelly that says that sage grouse population survival rates, they fluctuate annually based on climate variation and precipitation. So to me, looking at these very large landscapes, again, that's one of the major reasons we're seeing these population trends match up. So synchronous. A lot of folks believe we're in a mega drought. Since the 2000s, if you look at this chart, the Palmer Drought Severity Index, this is the number of months, looking at warmer temperatures and the amount of precipitation. So you can easily see the number of months that are drier and warmer far outweighs the number of months where you had more moisture and were a little bit cooler than average. An important note is our wet meadow restoration work started here in 2012. So how does this impact, again, our sage grouse populations? Well, chick survival, as you know, the first 60 days is a critical time frame for young chicks. They need to find these mesic resources out in the landscape. And again, Patrick Donnelly basically states that it's these years when we have above average moisture. These are the years when sage grouse populations boom. So these hens, what they can do is they don't have to travel as far from their nest sites to these mesic areas to find the diversity and abundance of the insects so that those chicks can immediately forage and start putting on weight. Of course, the opposite is true during drought years. because that hen has to take her broods a much farther distance to those mesic resources. And basically, some of these chicks likely succumb to exhaustion. They just wear themselves out. They may also be more susceptible to predation. So if we can get these chicks to survive to the beginning of September, that survival rate increases up to about 73% through the fall. If we can get them to the beginning of winter, survival jumps up to about 94% through the winter. So again, this just re-emphasizes that bottleneck of these delicate early chicks and the importance for quality brood rearing habitat on the landscape. This is one of my favorite pictures captured from a remote camera. This again shows that nice interface with the sagebrush, and this is a wet meadow system. There's a nice patch of Dutch clover here and dandelions that these sage grouse are foraging on. Another nice little meadow. Obviously, you've got a hen here with her broods, and this really surprised me just because of the close distance with this cow. The problem, though, is that we have an abundance of these incised channels in the landscape. And what happens is that all these incised channels, they capture the water and they continue to downcut. And over time, what happens is that water table also lowers as well. And so our moisture-loving plants basically kind of get dried out. These xeric plant species move in, they encroach, and the overall productivity of these systems declines. So this is just a slide of the numerous examples out there in the landscape affecting the quality of brood rearing habitat. Luckily, though, in 2009, the Nature Conservancy came to the Gunnison Basin and sat all of us managers down at the same table to talk about what climate change would look like here in the Gunnison Basin. And the outcome of that was this collaborative, multi-purpose landscape ecosystem restoration project that we now call the Gunnison Basin Wet Meadow and Riparian Restoration Collaborative. It seems like every year we're gaining another partner. The goals of our wet meadow collaborative work is to, of course, enhance habitat for Gunnison sage grouse and other wildlife, but we also wanted to support the land-based livelihoods like ranching on the public lands. And ultimately, we wanted to build this idea of resiliency in the landscape and restore the ecological function of these wet meadow and riparian systems. So we define resiliency as the ability to maintain the hydrologic and ecological functions of these systems by restoring the natural hydrology, getting those stream channels reconnected to the floodplain, getting the stream banks, again, to hold more moisture and reduce the amount of erosion that was occurring, and really get the native, diverse, again, water-loving plant species reestablished. So our priority sites, we've been doing work all the way around the Gunnison Basin. A lot of these sites are typically within a mile of active leks. And the way we're treating these systems, how we're actually prescribing is we're using some of these sticks and stone, simple restoration structures that Bill Zedike has outlined in his book, Let the Water Do the Work. So this first picture is a one rock dam. You can see the pooling of the water on the upstream side. That just helps slow that water down and again, get that water to saturate into some of those banks. The little fence there is something that we call a drift fence. It's a simple technique. We're not excluding wildlife or cattle from any particular area. The purpose of this drift fence is simply to break up trailing. So the fence is being built perpendicular to the trail, and it's changing the behavior of these cattle over time so that we don't get that incised channel developed over time. This is a photo I took early spring. This is on one of our private ranches up Ohio Creek. Basically, is it working? To me, I think this picture really demonstrates it. You can see the one rock dam there, getting that water back up and out out of that channel and spread back into that natural sheet flow. So you can see how that water is being spread out and again, re-wetting this alluvial fan and resaturating the natural wet sponge. But I need to thank a lot of individuals. Let's see, Renee Rondeau, retired Colorado Natural Heritage Program. Gay Austin, retired BLM. Susie Parker with the Forest Service, and then Rachel Miller with the BLM. They have put in just a ton of time doing vegetation transects to look at the plant response. So they've conducted over 217 veg transects, over 500 photo points. And really our objective with this monitoring was just to look at the increase in those wetland plant species cover. And are we actually decreasing the amount of bare ground and the percentage of those upland more xeric plant species in these wet meadow systems? So quick and dirty, this is just a chart showing that there is a significant response. You can see the treated area in blue, that overall trend compared to the control sites. You can see, again, we are increasing our overall wetland plant species cover across the 10 reaches that were monitored. And I like to point out that we're doing this, again, in a mega drought. But again, pictures really help sell it. This is a head cut on the west side of Flat Top on Forest Service lands. You can see in 1993 that incised channel was actively eroding. The Forest Service put a fence around it to keep the cattle out. So in May of 2013, you can see the amount of grass that has been reestablished. And then in August of 2013, we installed what we call a log and fabric step-down structure. Purpose of that structure was simply to stop the hit cut from advancing. And you can see there in 2019, we've essentially arrested the head cut, and we're now actually starting to get enough settlement into that channel and grade that system. So again, this was more of a preventative project. We simply wanted to stop that head cut from advancing and protect the wet meadow system upstream. Again, going back to our private ranch up Ohio Creek in 2012, a dry year. You can see the amount of bare ground there. By 2018, again, another dry year. You can see we really filled in some of that interspace. By 2015, again, it was a better year for precipitation, so things look a little bit lusher. But again, by 2019, you can see during another wetter year, just the amount of overall productivity. This is in Wolf Creek. You can see the amount of ribbon of wetland plants here. So we treated that with what we call a media luna, a couple one rock dams. 2013, you can see a little bit of expansion. 2016, again, more. By 2018, the wetland plant cover had expanded to about 95%. And for someone, again, that likes a little bit of the wildlife use, there is some anecdotal evidence that species like chorus frogs, tiger salamanders are also using these treatment areas. So again, this idea of building resiliency, holding more moisture in these systems, we're making it work.